Okay. All right. So I'm gonna welcome everybody. Welcome to Astrological Advantages to Psychedelic Journeys in 2023. It's a joy to have everybody here. We just did a little roll call for all of you that are just joining now. We have all over from the East Coast, New Jersey, New York, Brooklyn, Maryland, all the way out to the West Coast, all the way to Sydney, Australia, all over the world here with us today. And it's such a joy to be here with you all in this presentation, which is going to explore the astrological advantages to psychedelic journeys in 2023. A very kind of unique topic in that it is the intersection of two fields that are really burgeoning right now, still quite niche, but they're burgeoning. And now we have an intersection, which is archetypal astrology and also psychedelic-assisted healing. Okay. So if any of you don't know me, my name is James Moran. I'm an archetypal astrologer. I've been practicing archetypal astrologer for the past 13 years. And I'm going to talk with you today for about half an hour on this topic, astrological advantages to psychedelic journeys in 2023. And then we're going to open it up for questions. So before we dive in here, I would like to give everybody an invitation to the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle. So I'm going to be running a 6-week integration circle for those that are engaging in psychedelic-assisted healing. And that integration circle is going to use the tool of archetypal astrology as the primary integration tool. And for everybody who joins the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle, along with the membership comes a 2-hour personal one-on-one reading with me of your chart, your birth chart, and your transit chart. So that comes with it. So the sitting down for a reading can really help you understand the dynamics that we're going to talk about today in terms of the transits and how they apply to your personal life by looking at your astrological birth chart and then your transit chart of where the transits that we're going to talk about today land in your personal birth chart. So the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle is let's see here. Let's see. Paradigm Shift Integration Circle. I'm going to stop sharing with you for one moment so that I can share with you the information to join the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle, which we hope you do because it's going to be totally awesome. All right, so I'm putting in the chat now the link to learn more, to join. If you're watching the recording of this on the Archetypal News Network, you can just look at the link below and learn about the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle. Okay, great. So let's dive in here, shall we? Let's do it. Okay, so let's begin our talk today just with a little bit of history of archetypal astrology. So archetypal astrology is the specific school of astrology that was developed by the researchers Stan Grof and Richard Tarnas directly following the initial wave of research into psychedelic-assisted healing in the West. So Stan Grof and Richard Tarnas, they were looking for a tool that could help them be able to anticipate the type of material that comes up from the subconscious in psychedelic-assisted healing, particularly in what's called high-dose sessions, in which there's it's kind of like a profound healing experience in which some potentially very charged material can kind of emerge from the subconscious. And they were functioning in the realm of the psychological, the field of psychology. And they were looking at the tools that were in the Western psychological toolkit, because that's where they expected to find the tool that they were looking for, that in the toolkit there in the Western psychological field. So they looked at things like Rorschach test, they looked at thematic apperception test, and it didn't help them at all. It didn't help them at all. Somebody suggested they check out astrology, and they were hesitant at first because they were already working so far afield in the Western psychological tradition, but they checked it out, and that turned out to be the tool that could help them not only anticipate to an extent the tone and the themes of material that emerge in high dose sessions of psychedelic assisted healing. Also, it helped them, it basically gave them a map, a way of mapping the interior terrain of the individual psyche, so that they could get a sense of what is the terrain of this individual, what are the overarching themes of their life, what are some of the challenges of their life, what are the strengths that want to come from those challenges, and then where are they specifically now on their larger arc of psycho-spiritual growth, and what are the themes that they're facing now. That's kind of like a GPS system. It kind of provided a map and a kind of a navigation system of like where they are now, and gives a sense of the lay of the land ahead. And so that was a big surprise to them. Not only that, though, we also have that they discovered a new paradigm. They unintentionally discovered a new paradigm. They're already discovering a new paradigm in psychedelic assisted healing, which expanded the map of the human psyche vastly compared to what it was, in the times of Freud. But they weren't expecting to expand it this much, to actually include astrology, but expand it did, and it included not only astrology, it included an entirely new paradigm, in the sense that the mainstream materialist reductionist paradigm that is mainstream in the world today and has been predominant for quite some time, says that consciousness is a byproduct of basically the molecular interactions in our brains, and the universe itself is predominantly a material phenomenon born of the Big Bang. So the primary substrate of creation is material and energetic, and then consciousness is a secondary byproduct of the interactions thereof. So that's the materialist reductionist paradigm. In that paradigm, the planets wouldn't exert, the planets in space would not exert any noticeable influence on us, beyond very slight influence of gravitation or something like that. So there wouldn't be any reason to give them any significance in our personal lives. At the same time, though, by discovering that actually the movements of the planets do reflect significant material arising in the subconscious of the individual, they discovered that there's a process of reflection that could be referred to as without, so within. So as without, so within. When we look into outer space, we're looking at a reflection of our inner space. And so that is just an entirely different paradigm. And so when we look at the planets, for instance, if we look at the outer planets, the planets that are the most furthest out that we've discovered in our solar system, they would reflect the deepest spaces within ourselves. So there's the outer planets are called the transpersonal planets because they reflect an area of space that we need a telescope to see. We can't see with the naked eye. We can't see the outer planets with the naked eye. So in order to see that deep into space, we require a telescope. And the space within us that they reflect, similarly, we require something akin to a telescope. We require what Stan Grof would call technologies of the sacred, which is psychedelic-assisted healing, meditation, breath work, yoga, practices that allow us to have kind of a penetrating insight, thus like a telescope would be able to see deep into space, allows us to see deeply into the space within us. And so the transpersonal planets are what we're going to be talking about today. And predominantly what we're going to be talking about today are the transpersonal planets. So the 4 planets that we're really going to focus on today are Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. Okay. So let's have a look. Okay, so Saturn. Saturn technically is not considered one of the transpersonal planets, because Saturn, I decided to mention it here. I decided to bring it in here, but it's not really considered a transpersonal planet, because Saturn is actually the archetype of, it's the archetype that's very much associated with the personal, because it's reflective of our personal psychological structure, our personal physical structure. And so at the same time, though, it's significant enough to bring into this conversation, in a large part by contrast, to show the leaping off point to the transpersonal planets, because the transpersonal planets, where Saturn reflects the personal psychological structure, physical structure, the transpersonal planets reflect the part of ourselves, the depth of the space within ourselves. When we go deep enough inside ourselves, we actually transcend the personal, and we connect to the point inside ourselves where we are connected to the whole of life, the whole of life. So that's like the entirety of life, right? So that's transcendent of the personal. Whereas Saturn's actually the last visible planet that we can see easily with the naked eye. And as such, it is associated with the limits of perception, the limitations of perception. And so, for instance, it looks like this world is limited to separation and distinction. Like, for instance, you and I are separate from each other. I'm distinct from the computer. You're separate from the computer, from the desk. Everything is distinct. It has its own separate entity to it. And that's very Saturnian. Okay. And so the transpersonal planets are the leaping off point beyond that, the ability to look at the perception of reality in such a way that we don't just see this surface perception of everything being distinct and separate. We actually see a deeper experience beyond that, as reflected by the planetary archetypes, transpersonal. We see beyond that, and we connect within ourselves to aspects of reality that actually transcend that separation and limitation. So the specific archetype of Saturn, the specific symbolism of the archetype of Saturn, exists on a spectrum. And so actually all the planetary archetypes have their symbolism existing on a spectrum that goes from the challenging side to the rewarding side. Okay, so challenging side, for instance, of Saturn is reality checks, burdens, responsibilities, endings, limitations. These are all associated with Saturn. You know, just like that separation principle, we have limitations, we have separations, boundaries. We also all share the kind of limitation of mortality. That's a great limitation. Our lives do not extend infinitely. There's a kind of like a deadline. So that's a limitation associated with Saturn. The positive side of the spectrum of symbolism of Saturn, the rewarding side, is discipline, perseverance, all the things that come from facing the challenging side. So facing those reality checks, those burdens, responsibilities, we come up with maturity, inner authority, self-mastery, healthy boundaries. Okay, so this is the positive side of Saturn here. So let's move on and let's look at Uranus. So Uranus would be the next planet out beyond Saturn. Okay, Uranus would be the next planet out beyond Saturn. And it is the planet that symbolizes the leap beyond what we perceive around us as the limitations of reality. What we perceive around us as limitations of reality, for instance, mortality. For instance, you and I are separate. Aging, any type of limitation. Uranus symbolizes the leap beyond that as the next planet, deeper into space, reflecting the space deeper within us. As all planetary archetypes, though, at the same time, it exists on a spectrum of symbolism, from the challenging side to the rewarding side. And so the challenging side for Uranus, we have disruption. We have the unexpected, the trickster, the sudden, the inconsistent, the fickle. We have all these aspects of Uranus that pose disruptive challenge. Like, just like if we assume reality is what we see on the surface level, you know, to have it be revealed that there's more to it than that, that can be very disruptive. So that's the challenging side of the spectrum of Uranus, disruption. The rewarding side is rebellion, emancipation, innovation, the revolutionary, the new, the exciting. Just like we're open to it, and we discover that there's something beyond the surface level perception of reality, it can be emancipating. It can be very revolutionary, very new, very exciting for us. Okay. So in experience of psychedelic-assisted healing, Uranus can show up as sudden realizations, unexpected feelings of freedom and release, even reliving the final stages of one's birth, when one becomes free of the birth canal and is finally born into the new world. So that's the archetype of Uranus, very significant archetype when we're dealing with psychedelic-assisted healing. Let's look at our next archetype, the archetype of Neptune, again, existing on a spectrum from the challenging side to the rewarding side. The challenging side of Neptune. So Neptune in the Greco-Roman mythology was the king of the ocean. And Neptune symbolism has to do with infinite planes, like the infinite ocean, the infinite sky, the infinite imagination, the infinite dream realm, the infinite spirit realm, the infinite collective unconscious, the infinite heaven. These are all Neptunian planes. There's no up, there's no down, there's no center, there's no boundaries, infinite. And so Neptune symbolizes that which is beyond the realm of distinctions and boundaries, because it transcends boundaries. So that can have a challenging aspect to it, challenging aspects to it. On the challenging side of the spectrum, we have disillusion, we have lack of boundaries, we have confusion, we have over-idealization and escapism, okay? On the rewarding side, we have imagination, a sense of unity with all things, divine inspiration, selflessness, and selfless service. So association with those infinite planes, there's no centers, no boundaries. It's easy to call forth the kind of selfless, fundamental selflessness in human nature, because there's no center. So because of Neptune's association with dissolving and reconnecting with the principle of unity that underlies all of phenomenal reality, this astrological archetype shows a particular affinity with experiences of psychedelic-assisted healing. Because along the path of psychedelic-assisted healing, we can have that sense of disillusion, ego disillusion, connecting again, going to those deep reaches of the space within the transpersonal archetypes, as reflected by the transpersonal planets deep in space, and connecting with that sense of a unifying principle that underlies all things. It's not readily apparent, but it's very true, and it's very transcendent of apparent reality, that there's a unifying principle behind and throughout all things that unifies them. Very important fundamental need of the human being to be able to connect with this birthright of ours, that deep within ourselves is this point of the transcendent archetype of Neptune. It's part of our nature. Just like the transcendent archetype of Neptune says that we are all in a unified whole. So similarly, that archetype in space is reflective of the depth within us. It's a unified field. It's a unifies two sides of the same coin. And that depth that it reflects in us is the depth of connecting with that unified field. So let's look now at Pluto. So Pluto, again, existing on a spectrum from the challenging side to the rewarding side. So Pluto in Greco-Roman mythology was the god of the underworld. And as such, Pluto was relegated to the underworld, and nobody saw Pluto. Nobody witnessed Pluto except when they died. And they went through transformation. They went down into the underworld. That's the only time that's the only time when they would experience Pluto. Okay, so as such, the archetype of Pluto is associated with that which is hidden, that which is powerful, that which is transformative. Just like when we look at the placid earth. You know, we look at the placid earth, we look out over the placid earth, right? Seems so peaceful. But then when we experience the content that exists, the roiling content that exists beneath it, it comes out in the form of propelling magma, lava out of a volcano that completely obliterates and yet transforms the landscape. So that's the archetype of Pluto, that which is hidden, that which is powerful, elemental, transformative. Okay, so the challenging side of the spectrum: power struggles, strong associations with sexual taboos, feelings of possession by unsavory energies normally repressed, like jealousy and anger. The rewarding side of the spectrum: the fires of transformation, ego death and rebirth, connection to the deep mystery of life, aligning with the will of life, aligning with the powerful, elemental, transformative will of life. Very, very important. Because of Pluto's association with our psyche's inbuilt ability to transform itself, including going through an ego death rebirth experience in which old constrictive behavior patterns die away, Pluto has a particular affinity with psychedelic-assisted healing. That is the actual healing modality that catalyzes this very function that's inherent in our psyches. We have a plutonic function inherent in our psyches. That's why the archetype of the phoenix is so potent for us. The bird that burns up and is born anew from the ashes. Why does that fascinate us? Because we have inherent in our psyches a function. It's a healthy function. Just like a forest fire might look so destructive, but after it's done, you know, a lot of new growth is there, and there's a lot of space for new growth and a lot of thriving growth. And so similarly, we have that function inside ourselves. Psychedelic-assisted healing gives us a container and kind of like the okay to actually acknowledge and experience this side of our psyche that otherwise a forest fire needs to be contained. You know, if our life is a forest fire, our psyche is a forest fire, it might not gel with the niceties of society. So psychedelic-assisted healing gives us a container and a kind of a framework in which that's totally not only accepted, it's honored, and to such an extent that that we're going to actually look at Pluto a little more here. We're going to say, because of Pluto's association with the phoenix, which burns up in its own fires of transformation, is born anew. That's the essential capacity within our own psyches that gets activated by psychedelic-assisted healing. So we're going to spend more time on this archetype than the others. Okay. Particularly worth pointing out is Pluto's tendency to appear as if things are getting worse before they get better. So an example of this would be a compulsion or behavior pattern that becomes exaggerated before we are released from it. Transformative fires associated with the plutonic function in our psyches and also in our collective are unpleasant when we struggle against them versus surrender to them. Okay, so very important there. All right. Let's look at the transits for this year, what everybody came to hear about. So before we do, can anybody just help us by typing in the chat what your perception are of the differences between world transits versus personal transits? Can anybody help us kind of delineate the difference there? World transits versus personal transits. Anybody know? Type it into the chat if you do. I'll pull it up here. Nobody? World transits versus personal transits. This is the teacher seeing if you're paying attention. I know we got some talented astrologers in the audience.
Well, the world transits have to do and affect everyone.
Yes, indeed.
Personal is just you.
Yep. All right, let's see what Jennifer says. It is a transformation on both personal and collective level, question mark. Yeah, so so world transits are the movements of the celestial bodies in the sky, the symbolism that they represent, and the way in which that symbolism plays out on the world stage in which we all experience and partake in. We're all in the soup of whatever alignments are happening and positions are happening in the sky. So for instance, 2020, world pandemic, world in lockdown, powerful triple conjunction, Jupiter, Saturn, Pluto, square Uranus. This is very reflective of what was happening in the world at that time, and we were all a part of it. I mean, it was everybody's reality. It was our collective experience. At the same time, though, personal transits is where that alignment that's functioning in the sky at any point in time falls in your personal birth chart. And that's going to reflect how the experience of the collective in the world is filtered down through your individual personal experience. So that is, like the example of 2020. We were all in a global pandemic, but how it was reflected in our individual lives was totally different from one person to the next. It was totally different, right? And that's because that difference can be seen in the personal transits. How it comes down into your birth chart. Okay. All right. And let's look here at the world transits for this year. So we've got Saturn. Saturn just entered into Pisces. And so I chose this, the topic or the title of this talk is Astrological Advantages to Psychedelic-Assisted Healing actually Astrological Advantages to Psychedelic Journeys in 2023. So this one I threw in there is not necessarily readily experienced as an advantage. It can be an advantageous transit should we understand how to use it, and should we also understand how it's falling in our own personal birth chart. So this is a good kind of exercise here to understand the energies that are up right now, how to make the most of them so that it actually is an advantageous transit. Because if it's not, if we don't really understand it, it can be actually a challenging transit. And why is that? That's because the archetype of Saturn, to review against once again, has to do with limitations, reality checks, burdens, endings, responsibilities, tradition. Also, it's all the things that come from facing limitations, reality checks, burdens, responsibilities, like maturity, inner authority, self-mastery, healthy boundaries, perseverance, and discipline. Okay. And the sign of Pisces is the sign that's associated with the ideal, the dreamy, the divinely inspired, the divine union, selflessness, lack of boundaries, escapism, fantasy. It's very Neptunian. Pisces and Neptune are symbolically akin to one another. So when we have the two come together, as we have this month of March 2023, when Saturn enters into Pisces, we can have the ideal and the dreamy getting kind of a reality check, a Saturnian reality check. And so that's not always easy. Saturn requires maturation, and if the Piscean energy is kind of escapist, fantastical, dreamy, and not necessarily grounded in our actual physical, practical manifestation, mundane existence, then we get a reality check. We get a Saturnian reality check. So I'm going to actually give a shout out to my fellow talented astrologer, Shannon Stearns, who gave me the material for this next slide. She just kind of put together a little bit of a mashup of how Saturn Pisces can show up. So it says here on the left, themes. So help those who truly need it, boundary those who don't. So Pisces, inherent in it, has a kind of a quality of the selflessness and the desire to help others. That's that kind of like dissolved boundary aspect of it, sense of empathy with others, desire to help others. Saturn brings in the structure, help those who truly need it and boundary those who don't. Okay. So that's a little maturing there. That's a maturing. And how Saturn is going to ask you to mature, again, depends on where in your own personal birth chart this transit is taking place. Discipline your spiritual and artistic practice. So spiritual practice, artistic practice, are they escapist? Are they not, do they not have actual practical relevance to your mundane existence into life and the needs of life around you. If not, then we might get a Saturn reality check there that really wants us to actually ground down and discipline and have our spiritual practice become structured, that's Saturnian, and practically applicable to the needs of existence. Okay. Question God. That's another one. That's the kind of having moments of doubt so that we can not have our sense of spirituality be something that's escapist or kind of a fantasy, and actually question that aspect of what we're doing to see, like really what it is. What is our connection to the divine? Overcome escapism and addiction. So dreams realized through realizing dreams may need to be more realistic. So it's great. The Piscean function of being dreamy and having dreams and visions of what's possible is necessary for the human being. At the same time, a dream that's forever a dream never gets realized because it's always a dream. So what she's saying here is dreams might become realized by realizing that those dreams need to be more realistic. So bringing in a practical function there, the Saturnian function. Seeing the ethereal and the material mundane. So that's, really kind of not having our sense of the sublime and the sacred be apart from our material existence, but actually finding it in the real kind of prosaic, just everyday existence. Okay, faith deepened through ritual and time-honored tradition. Again, so that sense of connection to the divine brought down through Saturnian structure and tradition and ritual. She also added some pieces about water here because Pisces is a water sign, water karma tending to our effect on the oceans, responsibility and response to water and structures built on or adjacent to it, structures, Saturn, water, Pisces, expand care for aquatic creatures. So this is all good stuff. This is all to help us dial in the world transit and then to kind of feel into what this world transit is asking for us personally. So as Saturn entered into Pisces, we could just see around us for instance, in the field of psychedelic-assisted healing, we could just see around us like the reality check, the Saturnian wake-up call. I mean, the divine timing is just when you really, when you dedicate yourself to the study of astrology, even some really very challenging things still cause a sense of marvel and jaw dropping, because it's just like, whoa, nobody dances like life and creation can dance, and the symbolism there and how it you see the march of the celestial bodies, and then you see how just on time, absolute synchronization events happen here on Earth. So in the field of psychedelic-assisted healing, some reality checks, we've had some businesses that have folded, some bankruptcies, where the vision of what's possible, it got a reality check. It got a reality check, and they folded. And that's happened in the field of psychedelic-assisted healing. In the field of psychedelic-assisted healing, we also had news of tightening up measures around the laws regarding the prescription of ketamine. And ketamine is a medicine in psychedelic-assisted healing. It's very Neptunian, lots of dissolving of boundaries associated with it. And kind of along with that dissolving of boundaries, there has been a kind of like an ease of obtaining prescriptions, which maybe has led to possibly the abuse of ketamine, possibly using it for kind of escapist ventures, and then the coming in of new laws to tighten up the regulations around it. So Saturnian, you can kind of, what's coming to light there is the Saturnian kind of heavy burden of having this just unregulated on the market or with little regulation. And then also the Saturnian kind of reality check of bringing in the limitations around laws. We also have like in other news, like we had this train accident that happened in the United States, in which a train crashed and spilled pollutants into the water system that was actually really extensive pollution. And that, like Shannon Stern said right here, responsibility and response to water and structures built on or adjacent to it. So, that's basically what it's talking about. It was a train track running, train crashes, it gets into the water system, so there's responsibility there, and there's a reality check there that, the pure pristine waters of Pisces getting polluted by this burdenous reality check, which is going to require a Saturnian response of responsibility and really, tightening up the discipline around caring for the waters. Okay, so let me see here. Yeah, let's move on here. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Pluto in Aquarius. So a lot of what we're going to touch upon today, transit wise, is actually, I'm actually going to go back here to Saturn. Let's go back. So a lot of what I'm touching on transit wise is our big transits and long transits. One of the transits we're going to be talking about is 2 decades long. Another transit we're going to talk about is a decade long. Why are we talking about 2023 and the astrological advantages to psychedelic journeys in 2023? Because these long transits, which can be quite advantageous for us, they can be quite advantageous for your own kind of catalyzation of your psychospiritual growth path. They are kicking in now, even though they're going to last for a long time. They're really kicking in now this year. They're going to be very apparent. And this year, though we have Saturn in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces, as we learn to navigate it, can actually be strengthening, maturing for us. We do not yet have Saturn conjunct Neptune in Pisces, which is going to come in like almost halfway through 2024. And that's a really challenging transit. That's a really challenge. That's like the challenge that I talked about with Saturn and Pisces. That's like this challenge on steroids. And so we're not there yet. So that's a little bit why this talk is structured this way, because 2023 is kind of like you can get some good important work in before we enter into that challenging period of Saturn conjoined Neptune that's going to last almost 3 years. It's really like the center of the decade. That transit shows up. So we've got this Saturn in Pisces, can be good if we navigate. We've got several other good transits starting, and we're in a little sweet spot here. Sweet spot 2023. Okay, that can be one of the slogans, sweet spot 2023. All right, so Pluto in Aquarius. So Pluto, we talked about Pluto. It's associated with the dark, the hidden, the repressed, the taboo, but also the powerful, the power struggles, the fires of transformation, the elemental power and will of life to evolve and transform out of itself. Okay. And surrendering our individual will to the larger evolutionary will of life in the universe. Okay. So Pluto has an association that is both with the fires of transformation, the kind of the mythos of the phoenix, and our own inbuilt innate capacity for death and rebirth, and for, to have our own psychospiritual evolution kind of burn us up so that we rise born anew from the ashes of ourselves. Pluto's associated with that. Pluto's also associated with the sexual, libidinal, instinctual drives at the base of our psyche. And why is that? There's a kind of like a resonance. Those different manifestations of the Pluto archetype are resonant with each other. The French called orgasm le petit mort, which means the little death, in the sense that the sexual drive is a drive for evolution. It's a drive for evolution out of ourselves. And it's also a kind of like a surrender to kind of like being taken over by these like instinctual impulses. And so that's the Plutonic as well. So Pluto's associated with that side, and Pluto's associated with also the deep, powerful, transformative energies inside the human psyche, which is going to be important as we continue to talk about Pluto. So let's talk about now the sign of Aquarius. So Aquarius is the sign in the zodiac, the segment of space associated with the sign of the zodiac sign of Aquarius is associated with the futuristic, the socially progressive, the technologically innovative. And Aquarius is the zodiac sign most associated with the practice of astrology. There is an association there, kind of a Uranian association of like what's innovative, what allows us to kind of leap beyond the limitations for the betterment of all. That's associated with the sign of Aquarius. And so this is for the next 2 decades that we're going to have this transit. It's a long transit. For the collective, it's really it's really has like a potential in it for the human experience, the human project evolving through the technological. So like, we would, there's talk of like integrating technology with our physical structures, things like that. So really evolving through technology. That's kind of, where we're at. That's where we're at in our collective. We look around, that's where we're at, being reflected by the celestial bodies, Pluto and Aquarius. Good example of Pluto and Aquarius to kind of illustrate that point. Last time Pluto was in Aquarius, Mary Shelley was born. She's the author of Frankenstein. And Frankenstein, the story is very Pluto and Aquarius kind of story. And it's so Pluto and Aquarius is associated with, rather, Frankenstein is the story of, this kind of mad scientist piecing together this body out of the parts of dead people, and then kind of using this like electricity to invigorate and bring life into this body that's very Plutonic, because it's like kind of made of the dead and it's reborn. And then, you got the Aquarian technology there, and it's like showing how this is an evolutionary leap of humanity. And at the same time, this kind of monster is released. And so it's very Pluto and Aquarius kind of situation. We've got, we're integrating technology into our bodies. We definitely, we've got these creation of bodies within technology through AI and stuff like that. Let's see what else. So the U.S. Constitution was created when Pluto was in Aquarius last time. So it's been a while since Pluto's been in Aquarius. U.S. Constitution, you can think the U.S. is a country that champions, if we think about it, champions the technology, like kind of evolution through technology. That's been part of the mythos of the United States. We have the poet Keats. He was born with Pluto in Aquarius. He has a quote, says, "There is an electric fire in human nature tending to purify." And so that's, that's very Pluto and Aquarius, the purifying fire of Pluto. And then he brings in the word electric there, electric fire. We're going to see, because Aquarius is the sign of the zodiac that is associated most associated with astrology. We're going to see, things like we're seeing now, which is more the use of astrology as a tool, as an integration tool for deep psychospiritual growth, as exhibited through, for instance, psychedelic-assisted healing. So, the paradigm shift integration circle that's coming up over the next 6 weeks. We're going to see more groups like that, integration circles that use astrology as a tool to help guide us through the depths of our psyches, and the deep transformation that we're going through on an individual level that's required of us at this point in human evolution required of us on an individual level so that we can go through it on a collective level. So we're going to be seeing more examples of this, the paradigm, something like the paradigm shift integration circle. So again, paradigm shift integration circle, next 6 weeks, it's going to be great. Come join us. You'll be able to get, an astrology reading with me one-on-one, in which you'll be able to see how this transit is inflecting personally in your life, like where Aquarius is in your chart and where this Pluto's entry and transit through Aquarius over the next 20 years is for you. And yeah, so come join us. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. We're right at the start of the new zodiac year right now here in March. Next week, we have the first day of spring. It's the beginning of it's when Sun enters into Aries. It's the beginning of the zodiacal year. We have a new moon at the same time. Fresh new beginning. Great time to start something new, start a new endeavor with a wonderful fellowship, deep transformation. Come join us. It's going to be awesome. Also, the early bird discount ends on the spring equinox. So make sure to get in there before that happens. Okay, so Pluto in Aquarius. All right, we're going to move on now to look at the next transit here. Okay, so glorious news. Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are entering into soft alignment, harmonious alignment. And this is 2022, 2020 to 2033. So that's a decade. That's a decade ahead of us. It peaked in a little bit in 2022. It's really kicking into gear in 2023. This is exciting news that I'm very excited to talk with you about in our next section here. And before we dive into it, I want to just pull up that chat function if it's convenient. Try not to unmute yourself if you can, but just pull up the chat function and let me know if you know what the difference is between hard alignments between planets and soft alignments. If anybody knows, if you're an astrologer out there or you studied astrology, help me out here. Give me a little something. Hard alignments versus soft alignments. What are hard alignments versus soft alignments? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. The paradigm shifted. Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, it's basically about the degree of intensity with the alignments, basically.
Yeah. So which would be more intense?
The hard.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so we have some, thank you for that. We have some responses here. Geeta says hard equals pushing, soft equals support. Okay. That's nice. So yeah, just mute yourself if you don't mind. So the hard equals pushing, soft equals support. Nice little summation there. We have Louise here. She says hard are squares and opposition. So that's the actual angular relationships and angles. There's squares and oppositions, trines and sextiles is soft. Great point. Wonderful point. So yeah, the hard alignments are tense. Hard alignments are tense. Soft alignments are more harmonious. Sometimes, tension can be good because tension can create propulsion that can propel us to grow in the way we need to grow. So it can be good. At the same time, though, it can be very much in our face, very much demanding of our attention and very disruptive. Soft alignments are more, there's some relative ease there. There's a sense of a kind of a natural opening and segueing into the combination of the archetypes involved. Okay. All right. Excellent. So now let's look. So this is just what it looks like. This is Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto in soft alignment in 2023. Just so you can see what a soft alignment looks like. A trine angle between Uranus and Pluto, a sextile between Pluto and Neptune, and a sextile between Neptune and Uranus. It's just through the eyes of an astrologer, it's a nice sight. It's a nice sight to see. It's kind of a sigh of relief. It elicits a sigh of relief because it's very rare. These outer planets, they move real slow. So it's very rare to have them fall into an alignment like this. We're blessed with a decade of it. And how it's going to show up, I'm going to explore with you right now, but it's just nice to, it's just nice to behold. It's nice to behold that image there. Okay, so let's look at some examples. All right. So we're going to use Uranus and Pluto. We'll just use Uranus and Pluto as our kind of case study here. Some examples of hard alignments versus soft alignments. Actually, let me just go back for a second. So if you do know something about your chart, you can see to an extent where these alignments fall. So you might get a sense of where they're falling in your chart. If you have a planet in Aquarius, Pisces, Taurus, if you have readily in your mind your chart, you might be able to get a sense of where those land. Again, it's very important because what we're talking about here are the world transits, how it shows up for us collectively, and how it shows up for you individually is going to depend on how it aligns with your birth chart. So let's look at this case study here, Uranus Pluto, as an example of hard alignments versus soft alignments. Okay. So during the hard alignments of Uranus Pluto, the energies are more dramatic. They're more disruptive. They're more in our faces. Okay. So examples are, for instance, in the 1960s, we were in a Uranus-Pluto conjunction, very tight. They're tight together, and that's a hard aspect between those two archetypes. And the Plutonic fires of transformation were released everywhere. So fires of transformation, Pluto released Uranus everywhere around the world. Protests around the world. Also, Uranian innovation was propelled by our Plutonic drive for evolution, and we went to the moon. So it's like this Uranian, this sense of innovation just getting propelled by this monstrous this just powerful, like almost like possession by this powerful drive to evolve. Okay, so equally, the inner fires of transformation were catalyzed by the first wave of psychedelic-assisted therapy. Yet the catalyst, LSD and other psychedelics, the catalyst left the therapeutic container of the research environment and contributed to the Uranian disruption of society. So that's Uranus and Pluto in a hard aspect. It's the fires of transformation were really activated by Uranus. And you can see, if you look at the research at that time, it was very deep transformation. They were witnessing just flabbergasting amount, and study participants, the revelations they're having about the human psyche and its potential to grow, heal, transform. It was so powerful because it's an hard aspect there, and it's got that propulsion and that release to it. But at the same time, that hard aspect really brings out the recklessness aspect of Uranus, and it the catalyst gets out into society, and the recklessness was propelled by the Plutonic drive to transform. And so we have it everywhere, which eventually causes this backlash and causes the psychedelic renaissance to actually go into retreat, for the psychedelic research to go into retreat for several decades. So in the 2010s, we also had a Uranus-Pluto hard alignment. That was a square. And again, the world was burning with the fires of transformation. Again, protests are everywhere. You can think of the Women's March. You can think of so many marches around the world. The evolutionary path of innovation again pushed us into, reaching for becoming a spacefaring civilization. Yet during these times, the repressed energies of our collective psyche was released to the surface, kind of as reflected by the hard alignment, somewhat kind of obnoxiously. I don't mean that, like all reverence to the divine and that the power of that time was necessary, but it was the hard aspect kind of drew it into an intensity almost to the point of caricature of these archetypes. Psychedelic-assisted therapy was actually already active in the 1950s. So there was already the research going on in the 50s, but it was in the 60s when Uranus Pluto came into a hard alignment that it got loose and transformed the culture. And then we had people like Timothy Leary representing that culture. And Timothy Leary did not have per se content to present about psychedelic-assisted healing. He was really a representation of the rebel Plutonic figure. He was rising up as a representation of the Plutonic figure who is rebellious, who is Uranian. And he was propelled by that Plutonic force of evolution. And so, you know, you have the 50s, the same research is going on with psychedelics in the 50s, but it's not until the 60s, Uranus Pluto in hard alignment, you have somebody like Timothy Leary just appears. They just manifest. They just become part of the conversation in society, because that is what the archetype brings about. So the same is true of Donald Trump. Uranus Pluto in hard alignments was there in the during his presidency, and he was kind of brought up as the obnoxious representation of the repressed energy. There's an energy in the American kind of project, as it were, that is, it's commercial. It's kind of like a commercial energy there. And, you know, to some extent that is kind of not acknowledged. So as long as it's not acknowledged, it's kind of there as, you know, this repressed energy. And then we have this Uranus Pluto in hard aspect, and it propels up to the surface somebody who represents who represents the energy. They represent the energy that's repressed, and they come out through this Uranian character, rebel, like a rebel energy. And again, it's really in your face, right? So that's that Uranus Pluto in hard aspect. So now we're entering a soft alignment. So in a soft alignment, we can really, to a large extent, the same transformational potential is there. The same transformational potential is there. There's a tremendous transformational potential during those previous hard alignments. So in a soft alignment, same transformational potential is there. It's just we can kind of a little bit more smoothly build upon what was opened up during the hard alignments. So we can just kind of like segue and build upon what was opened up in the hard alignments without having to cause further disruption. Yeah, so let's do this. Let me just look at my notes here. Yeah, so for instance, like space race, you know, we can just build upon, you know, all the propulsive energy of evolution that came in the 60s and then 2010s. We can just kind of build upon it now with the same transformative energies there, but in a way that's a little bit more of a smooth ride. Same with psychedelic assisted therapy and integrating it into our society and integrating the lessons learned about the transformative potential of the individual, that they can be accepted a little bit more easily in ourselves and in society. Yeah, let's see. Let's look here at a little quote from Stan Groff to kind of help us understand a little further here. So Stan Groff was born with Uranus and Pluto in hard alignment. Okay, he was born with Uranus and Pluto in hard alignment, and so he was very active during the 60s when those two archetypes were in hard alignment. There was the real transformative power being unleashed, and we need people like him because he has the dramatic. He represents the dramatic kind of leverage that allows that door to be opened, right? And here's a quote from him. The message of so many spiritual teachers is that the only revolution that can work is the inner transformation of every human being. You know, it's Uranus and Pluto, the only revolution, Uranus, the inner transformation, Pluto, okay? So to get a sense, like we could, by comparison, we could get a sense of Uranus and Pluto in soft aspect and soft alignment. Like think of people like Betty White, for instance, or Ava Gardner. So Betty White is somebody, so Pluto, we talked about this earlier, how Pluto has an association with the sexual. Pluto's association with everything else that we mentioned, the dark, the hidden, the taboo, the transformative, also has an association with the sexual. And Betty White, she was, she kind of played a role in society where she talked about sex. She talked about sex. And she talked about kind of the depth of sex, the kind of taboo of sex, but she did it in a way that was kind of smooth, it was smooth. And then the Uranian aspect there is the humor. She brought in humor. Also the Uranian aspect of the Pluto, the Uranus and Pluto in soft aspect with her is kind of like the empowered independent individual, the empowered independent woman, the empowered independent individual. Same with Ava Gardner. She was also quite open about her kind of passion and zeal and sexuality. And at the same time, it was not like in your face, it was kind of smooth. And she had also that sense of kind of like this empowered, independent individual quality to her. So that can give you a sense of like the hard aspect versus the soft aspect. We've got the soft aspect now. We're just entering into it. It's very sweet. It's a great segue into your own unfolding of your own spiritual path, of your own psychospiritual growth, of your own path of psychedelic-assisted healing, your own path of whatever it is, whatever path you're on, whatever kind of insight you seek. So let's look now at a great way to make use of these energies. A great way to make use of these energies is to participate in a paradigm shift. Participate in a paradigm shift. Because we need it. We really need a paradigm shift. The Pluto burns away that which is old and not necessary, so that from the fires of the transformation, we can, and the ashes of what was once, we can arise fresh and new. And that is what we need to do. We talked about earlier how struggling against the Plutonic transformative process versus surrendering to it is gonna, struggling is gonna make it harder. And we're collectively in it, we need to let go of previous approach to industry and to culture and to even our relationship to individuality, and kind of surrender to the fact that a transformation is calling forth our potential from us. Okay. So the paradigm shift that we're talking about right now is the paradigm shift from the materialist reductionist paradigm to the archetypal paradigm. So the materialist reductionist perspective says that consciousness arises from the interactions of molecules in our brains, and that we live in a predominantly material universe from which consciousness is a byproduct. So again, we live in a universe in which the primary substrate is material. It's born from the Big Bang. Consciousness is a byproduct. So what astrology tells us is that the outer space reflects inner space, right? That's how we began today. So our life is not just what happens. It's not that our life is limited to what happens in the molecular interactions inside our head and that everything outside of us is random. The movements of the bodies, celestial bodies in space, are reflected on the theater of life here on Earth and in the arising experiences within us. And that, if we kind of follow that line of thinking to its, we follow that trail to its depth, what we find is an entirely different paradigm, a paradigm in which consciousness is the fundamental substrate of the universe and of creation. Consciousness is the fundamental substrate. And the material universe is a byproduct of that. And if we follow that if we continue along this line of exploration and we follow to its fullest, we find that the origin actually of this material universe, the origin of the entire material universe, the stars, the Big Bang, time, space, life, creation, it all originates in the creation of a separate consciousness, the creation of a separate self. We started today talking about Saturn, creation of a separate self that creates the structures of which we are experiencing as life. And what is that separate self? That separate self is you. That separate self is you. You are the one. You are that one. And this perspective allows us to look very differently at the 20 billion solar systems in the galaxy, the more than 20 billion galaxies in the universe. If we look through the materialist reductionist lens, then we can feel we're just a speck on a speck in a kind of like a smear of specks. That's just another speck in a huge smear of specks. And we could just feel very insignificant. Like we could go out and do some harm to life and it wouldn't even really matter because we're so insignificant. Whereas the archetypal perspective says that actually all the glittering stars and all the majesty of life and manifestation arises from the creation of separate consciousness, of your separate consciousness. So it places you in the very lap of creation. You're in the very, you're central to the actual burning furnace of creation. And the meaning and your path of spiritual growth and the meaning therein and the meaning of it is central to the creation of this whole project of existence, this whole project of the creation of the universe. So it's not that your spiritual path is insignificant and then everything else is just the way it is and it's all random. Your spiritual path is the point of this whole project. It's the point of it. You know, and actually coming into an experience of that perspective can totally transform a life. Just completely transform a life. And so that's the beauty of the archetypal perspective. That's the beauty of being able to, that, you know, we kind of do full circle and come back to the field, the Saturnian field of manifest reality and look around us. And then we get to marvel. We get to see the march of the celestial bodies through space. We get to marvel at the way they show up, the events that show up and the choreography of the divine, of which we are seated in the lap of. Okay, so we're gonna begin to wind down a bit here. And before we do, I just want to give one last invitation to you all to join the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle next 6 weeks. It's going to be awesome. It's integration circle for those on a path of psychedelic-assisted healing or on a path of any similarly insightful spiritual practice that has, you know, that same depth of penetrating insight. We're all are welcome. You could be a totally new, you could be a beginner or a newbie to both the fields of astrology and the fields of psychedelic-assisted healing. You could be quite experienced in one or both fields. All are welcome. This spring equinox, the early bird discount ends. I'm going to actually put in the chat here one more time. We'll put in the chat here one more time the link so that you can learn more about it. Hopefully join us. It's going to be rad and it would be great to have you with us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up to questions, and we have kind of like a little bit of a small group today. So so we can actually you know, unmute ourselves, maybe raise hands if you want and ask questions. We have Gita is raising her hand, maybe Jacob next. I'm not hearing people, but is Gita, you want to say something?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, please.
Well, I mentioned in the chat that you were talking about the 60s, but we also had the whole mystic mob from India coming out, as well as Stan's work.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of Neptunian stuff happening at the same time. I don't know where Neptune was in the 60s, but it seemed like
Amen.
there was transformation happening.
Yeah,
But
you mind if may I just kind of insert something there?
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing up Neptune, because I just didn't bring it in just as a matter of time. But actually in the 1950s, when the psychedelic-assisted healing movement started, was a Uranus-Neptune square. So it was very active. And then we got the 1990s as well, the conjunction, which is a whole other webinar just on itself because it's so rich. But yeah, please go on.
Well, with this lovely aspect that's coming up, do you think that nuclear fusion might get a go on this time? Get a Guernsey?
I mean, it would be great. I mean, I think it would be great. I don't really know, but you know, since we're in a soft aspect, maybe it would be, yeah, maybe
Yeah, it would. I think it'd be marvelous.
Maybe it would just kind of
solve a lot of problems with all these wars being
yeah
fought over gas and oil.
Yeah, so that would be kind of indicative of the soft alignment, kind of like just a falling away of, it's kind of like an evolutionary windfall type thing. So yeah, so great. All right, thank you, Gita. I think Jacob, did you want to say something as well?
Yeah, I wanted to ask, my sun is in Pisces, so Saturn entered Pisces, and I'm wondering what I should be looking forward to as it approaches. I'm 26-degree Pisces, so it's not there
I thought
yet.
you were going to say you're 26 years old. I was about to say, no. Yes, you look like 26 years old. You look like a spry young man. So 26 degrees of Pisces is actually, you got Neptune transiting it, because you're at the end of Pisces and Saturn's in the beginning. So you got a little while. You got a little while before Saturn gets there, but you really got Neptune cooking on it. Actually, at the time of this talk, we have a triple conjunction of Neptune. We have a triple conjunction of Mercury, Sun, Mercury, Neptune, square to Mars, right on your natal sun, my friend. So that in and of itself is I mean, you're at a talk like this. What more can we say? It's the sun, the bigger transit there is Neptune to the sun. That's the bigger transit, because that's a 4-year transit. The fact that so you have your birthday is like tomorrow or something, or when's your birthday?
Yes. Well, it's the 18th.
The 18th. Well, happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're going to turn 26 years old. Okay, so I mean,
now, how does this relate to the entheogens? The use of ayahuasca, LSD, mushrooms, cannabis. I missed the connection there. Are we looking, is this year special for all of us, in those of us who are psychonauts?
Yes, for all the reasons that I said. Yeah, the Uranus Pluto really supports, the Uranus Pluto and hard aspect propels psychedelic assisted healing, like the way a rocket will get propelled off the ground. That's what we're not in. What we are in is a soft aspect. So
anti-gravity.
It supports, I think it was Gita who said it, support. I think she said hard aspect pushing, soft aspect support. So it supports that depth there. Also, Neptune is there. Basically, the transpersonal planets, the ones that reflect the depth within the psyche that gets activated by entheogenic experience, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are all in harmonious aspect. And so they're all, so it's a time in which, you know, the entheogenic experience can be kind of easily segued into, both individually and collectively. Individually, it's going to a little bit determine on where it's landing in your birth chart. That will actually really describe the path. I mean, it will really give guidance on the path ahead of you, or the path ahead of anybody. You know, that's the beauty of looking at the birth chart and the transits, is that it's a kind of like a communion, a kind of a gnosis, or like a communion with the archetypes. We can see our own experience that's happening, entheogenic experience, and we can see the transits of the planets, and we get a real sense of a conversation between life, capital L, outside of us, and the inner healing intelligence inside of us. Or we could say cosmic healing intelligence as manifested around us, and the inner healing intelligence within us. So how specifically it's going to show up personally would be more like where it lands in your birth chart. Collectively, it's going to be very supportive of that entheogenic experience getting integrated into society, you know.
So people will be more open to it. Is that it?
I would cast in my lot for that. Yeah, I would say that, you know, it's probably going to be, the soft aspect is a little more friendly. Like the hard aspect, like we talked about in the 60s, it was so eruptive that it was almost frightening, you know, like it kind of, there was a recoiling, right? And then the research was shut down for like 3 decades. And so, no, not that.
When did this soft aspect start?
Well, it began to come into what's called within orb last year, but now it's really going to be like particularly this summer, and then just from then on for the next decade, it's going to be really beautifully just set up. It's just,
oh, is it kind of going retrograde, going back and forth?
Yeah, they do. All the planets except for the sun and the moon do a little 2-step action, 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
So we're in that period.
We're in a period where the reason why it becomes more intense is because the planets move at different speeds, and Uranus, the fastest of them, is catching up to the other ones. It's catching up, and as it catches up, it'll turn on more and more and more, and then when it's there, it's going to be there for a decade before it really. Uranus is the fastest moving, so that'll be the one to depart.
But is it at 1 degree yet? Not yet.
No. 1 degree. Let me look at what I have, that picture, that image. I can't pull it up here.
Saturn is 1 degree Pisces at the moment.
It doesn't need to be 1 degrees, actually. There's an orb of influence with world transits that's quite large. I think for a trine, it's like 10 to 12 degrees, or maybe 8 to 10 degrees. Rick
really?
says the orbs
for mundane astrology.
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Transits.
I thought it was always 1 degree.
Well, no. I mean, no, the world transits, because it's so broadly felt. It's just, you know, it's just there. Like we can feel it. It can be real active before then. And then with personal transits, it's a tighter orb. It's got to get like within 5 degrees, and then when it's within 1 degrees, like Neptune will be soon on your natal sun, then it's like really apparent. You know, it's really apparent. We can have a direct encounter with that archetype. Yes, I see. I think I see another hand. Is that Jennifer?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Hi.
Yes. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. So more or less, I had this question because for me, like, I guess I'll start off like this. I was born August 8th, 1986. And, you know, in the process, as I told you in email, and, you know, to let everyone else know, I'm on the autism spectrum. And so I noticed, you know, when having something like this, like there's this strong intuitive connection to things where, you know, sometimes you may pick up on things, you know, that are beyond the average person and such. And, you know, as I'm collecting all this information, which can be great information, but at the same time, I've been noticing it's allowing me to further disconnect from myself physically, and therefore being able to, I guess, making it even harder to relate to others and communicate with others. Because I have a lot of ideas and a lot of information that could be really helpful, in my opinion. And especially with the direction of how, I guess, like the planets are aligned, like, you know, now and into the future, I guess, what can if you have any advice on this, what can I best do to feel more, not only further connected in the body, but I guess in the process to have that sense of masculinity where it can at least act like a sufficient anchor weight, so you feel less like that balloon that's flying away because they don't have the anchor weight to keep them down.
Yeah,
in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah, the practice of astrology, it does have, we are talking about space. We're talking about, the zodiac, we're talking about sections of space. It can get very spacey. The planets are in space. We do want that sense of ground, and we do want that sense of connection. Looking at the birth chart and the transits and really understanding the birth chart, understanding your birth chart as a map to yourself, and looking at the transits as a map to where you're at right now can be helpful, because what it is that is life. That's life talking to us about ourselves. It's our own life talking to us about ourselves, reflecting back to us about ourselves in a language that is the language of our own life. It's reflecting to us back about it so that we can understand ourselves. We can understand where we are on the path, what exactly is happening. Because ultimately, when we are connecting with our path and what life is asking of us, it has a natural function of connecting us to others and to existence and to a role that we have to play. If we're getting kind of like lifted away, there's we're kind of we want to reconnect with our actual path of evolution that allows us to life wants to manifest through us. It doesn't just want somebody to be born on the earth and then just kind of like hardly touch ground, skate over it, and then fly away again. Life wants us to actually come into manifestation and kind of spend, because we are life. We are life itself, like capital L, just taking on an identity. And life, we have nothing to lose. We really have nothing to lose. So it wants to give what it has to give to itself by playing a role. So that part of that role is your journey. It is your journey of this exact question that you have of discovering, like, what is it? Why do I get pulled away? What's the message? What's happening here? And using the birth chart and the transits as a guide to help you on that. And that's your journey. That is your journey of coming into more embodiment and, possibly helping others or whatever it is that you're here to do. And probably this path and what you're experiencing is going to contribute to the meaning that you can then manifest out to the world, because you have gone through what you've gone through. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, like, I mean, I can see where, if, let's say, if your chart, and then you kind of see like the chart of, I guess, our planetary evolvement, you kind of see where they both align and kind of see where, I guess, your path lies in between those two alignments, if you will. Because I have noticed that I feel like I'm definitely connected to this sense of light, and that, it's there for some kind of a reason. And I do find from that light, I do get a lot of information, and therefore I will say I have manifested a lot of people just in crisis, one way or another, like random situations, random people just coming my way. I'm in this situation, I need help. And it's just been years of that. And so much so that it's almost like I developed like a savior complex, in a sense, from it all. And I noticed that I feel as though the more disconnected I am, like physically, from myself, I feel like I can almost sense like other people just kind of feeding off of my energy, because I don't have that.
You're that happens. That happens. I mean, that really happens. Well, you've touched upon something that probably should be acknowledged more in the world. It happens all the time. Anytime that we're spending ourselves too much, we open up. I mean, an easy example of is our immune system. We open up gateways for illness to get in, we get sick. But it happens with kind of energetic parasites and people, just ending up in situations that are not advantageous to our kind of energetic system. And so the inquiry that you're on, I mean, for what it's worth, what I have to offer in this moment is just a ton of encouragement.
Yeah.
the inquiry that you're on, we're here, this is life
Mhm.
taking place, all the profundity of life and all the inner healing intelligence, cosmic healing intelligence, it's here with us. And
Mhm.
we are life. And so let's, just make this moment special and say, I'm encouraging of you on this path, like the answers are yours to find.
Mhm.
Of course, there's the paradigm shift integration circle. There's me. You can always work with us. That's kind of the point of this call. So that's come your way.
Right.
At the same time, just follow your life. Like your own kind of tackling this question is life's evolution. It is life seeking to grow through you.
Mhm.
It sounds, it sounds like it's got a Saturn and Pisces quality to it. Like you're really looking for that grounding within that kind of Piscean realm. So
Yeah.
Jennifer, thank you. I think I see maybe is that I would like to, we're gonna wrap up soon. I want to get to some other people. Is that okay, Jennifer? Is that sitting well with you? And
Yeah, I just want to mention one quick thing. So in relation to that, by being more grounded, self can act as more of like that shield, or that, where you can implement those boundaries, and considering how we're almost like entering the age of Aquarius, which is highly feminine.
Mhm.
Me going into the whole, like, I guess what seemed more like a masculine role, if anything, would that contradict some of, I guess, like the patterns of what I guess the age of Aquarius could potentially be made up from?
It really depends. I mean, you want to do what feels right, and
Mm,
masculine and feminine, you could use the words yin and yang, because sometimes we can get confused with masculine and feminine, where
hmm
it's like we associate one with male and one with female, and you can have a female that's got an active principle. You can have a male that has a kind of like a surrender principle. It's like it's just something to follow the breadcrumbs of your own life's trail to explore.
hmm
um yes, so, and I'm happy to
Yeah.
talk with you further about it.
Yes.
I think I saw Susan Bupp. Did you raise your hand? I want to see, I think there was maybe somebody.
No, nope, I didn't raise my hand, but
You
thank
didn't
you
raise your hand.
anyhow.
Okay. Anybody else raising their hand out here? Gita?
Yeah, this with the Uranus, Neptune, Pluto alignment,
Mhm.
I'm hoping that negates a lot of the doom and gloom predictions about climate change and what the hell ever this, the awful predictions that seem to be coming about what's coming.
Well,
So
it would, I mean, the transits don't necessarily negate so much as they open up opportunities for energetic qualities. And the energetic quality of that soft alignment would be kind of a smooth segue into possible solutions. It's really up to us to step up and engage what those might be. But it would be, like possible solutions, obviously evolution, Pluto, technology, Uranus, technology, Aquarius, obviously kind of like a spiritual inflection, Neptune, the entheogenic revolution, psychedelic assisted healing is, like Stan said in that quote, the true revolution is the revolution of the individual's inner transformation. And when the individual kind of connects to a sense of reality, a different kind of relationship to reality, in which there's a sense that creation is actually something that arises from the individual separate sense of consciousness. So we can see that, oh, the archetype of the separate self is me, and that's an archetype through which life experiences reality, and everybody else is experiencing that same archetype. It looks different, but it's the same archetype, and it's the same consciousness experiencing that same phenomenon. And when we start to live with that perspective in mind, it is a totally different approach to life, and a totally different approach to the use of resources of the earth, the sense of reverence to the connection of nature. And with that, we can naturally just come up with alternatives. We can naturally come up with alternatives to to the way we live. Yeah, hopefully that, gives some hope.
Well, I belong to a group that's very focused on the evolution of the human soul, as in towards enlightenment, but not so much enlightenment as to get away, but enlightenment as to be embodied on this planet. So, yeah, that's what I'm hoping these energies will support.
Yes, me too. So I want to see if there's any questions. We'll take maybe 2 more questions. I want to see if there's any from folks who haven't mentioned anything yet. And there's also some nice kind of supportive comments here in the chat. But yeah, anybody have questions that hasn't spoken yet? Anybody want to raise a hand or chime in here? Or just, it doesn't have to be a question, statement, contribution.
I was going to say, if anyone wanted to mention something, maybe I can give my opinion on it, possibly. If I had to say something, I don't know.
No, it's okay. It's okay. Let's see if anybody who hasn't spoken yet wants to speak. Maybe they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nadine. I'd love to hear from you. Yay.
Hey, James.
Hey.
I just want to say thank you. What a great
Oh,
talk.
good.
Yeah, so good to hear and see you and get your wise insights, as always. So
Well, coming from you, that carries a lot of weight.
deep thanks to you and gratitude, and yeah, love to know more about the personal aspects to this. So I'm going to be sending you an email to try to book a session with you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, excellent. Yeah, we're doing good work, folks. We're doing good work with just having we're born in this life and we heed a call. Everybody who's on this call, we heed a call in this life, like to evolve, to transform, to connect with a sense of kind of a spiritual imbuement with life. And it's like we that's not a coincidence. That's not something that we're we're born with that impulse. It's inborn within us, and we are life. And so it's life trying to imbue meaning into itself. It's a heroic journey that we're on. It's really just beautiful and amazing. So why don't we take one more statement here before we sign off for the evening or the day, depending on where you are in the world.
I have a question.
Yes, please. Lane. Yes.
So, okay, so we have this good alignment coming up with Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, right? But then you said that there's a harder one coming in a year for, journeying. Which one is that? Is that like Saturn, Neptune or something? Or
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it never gives us a rest. The life, Saturn. I mean, it does sometimes occasionally give us brief rest, but yeah, these are wonderful big transits that we talked about today. But yes, in the middle of the decade, we do have a Saturn Neptune conjunction. I mean, the good news is as Saturn comes into a conjunction with Neptune, it will be an harmonious angle, at least to Uranus and Pluto, which are flanking to either side. So that's good. But a Saturn Neptune conjunction is one of the most difficult. It's one of the most difficult.
Can you say why?
What's that?
Can you say why?
Yes,
Expand.
I will say why. We want to. I'll just preface it with saying we don't want to candy coat things. When we're talking about astrology, we should tell it like it is to the extent that we can. And so Saturn Neptune. Neptune is the archetype of the connection to the unifying principle that unites us, that unites all creation, and to be connected with that is a natural need. It's like a requirement for a human being, for beings, almost like food and water. We don't acknowledge it, but it's there. I mean, that's why you have epidemics of drug use and things like that. It's like we're all searching. We're like just like ravenous consumption. We're all searching. What we're searching for is this connection with this unitive principle, which is the great balm, the great medicine, the great, like if psychedelics are the little medicine, that's the great medicine. That's the great balm. That's the great kind of resource for peace in a realm in which peace is hard to find. And Saturn is the archetype that will occlude that for some time. It rolls in with a reality check, and it forces us to have to really work for that. Like we really got to get embodied, and we really got to work for it. Like we really got to just get tested. Saturn really tests us. One way of thinking about it is Neptune is associated with the infinite planes, and whatever Neptune touches, it's like it takes on the quality and the color of that thing, like ink into an infinite sea. And so sometimes when it's Saturn, like a dark ink, black ink, gray ink, and it gets into that Neptunian sea, it can just seem like infinite limitation, infinite separation from God, infinite crisis of faith. But that's just one of the guises of the kaleidoscope of life. That's one of the archetypal combinations that we have to, it's always there. It always comes at the right time with the right purpose, asking us to grow, asking us to have to work for that connection to the divine, so that we can see that even in that deepest, darkest, like dark night of the soul, we can have our faith tested and find it even stronger than before. And so that's Saturn Neptune transit. It's not going to be like that for everybody. Collectively, it will be, like we saw in the Saturn in Pisces is like a Saturn Neptune. We had that train that crashed and pollution got into the water system. When Saturn Neptune were in aspect, I think is when there was that lead in Detroit, no, it was in Michigan, this like lead in the water. And then there's Hurricane Katrina, tsunami, 2005. That was the Saturn Neptune opposition, I think. And so, collectively, it's going to show up world transit wise for all of us collectively, but how it's going to show up for us individually depends on where it's going to land in your birth chart. So some people really be getting hit with like the dark night of the soul. Other people's won't, be hit so hard. But collectively,
wouldn't the sextiles to Uranus and Pluto modify that quite dramatically, though?
Well, that's a good thing. It's like, yeah, I'll take that, flanking on both sides. I mean, so that we don't have to deal with a Saturn Pluto hard aspect at the same time, thank God, or a Saturn Uranus hard aspect, thank God. We get to deal with a soft aspect. So that is nice. That is a flanking support. Take those blessings where we can. So that's good. It's a very good insight. It's a good point. In terms of the field of psychedelic-assisted healing, when that transit comes in the center of the decade, it's really going to be a test to kind of the honeymoon of psychedelic-assisted healing. There's this path that opens up this transformation and is so wonderful. And then we get into the middle of the decade and we get kind of like a rude awakening, and it really forces us to kind of stay the course and remain dedicated to the path even in trying times. Like like kind of more individual examples of Saturn Neptune are be like contaminated medicine, people getting sick. You could have somebody who's a proponent of harm reduction and people's right to drug use having an overdose or something like that. You can have you can also have things like the positive aspects of it would be like, Saturn's associated with the laws and the regulation, and Neptune is associated with the entheogenic sense of unity. And you could have that being kind of like incorporated into the law system. So there might be some laws and tests around like churches, religious freedom. Yeah, that's some few thoughts there. Any other questions here? Jennifer, would you be willing to mute your microphone? There's kind of like a shuffling going on that. A little bit. Thank you.
James, if you have an aspect in your chart that's not really favorable to doing entheogenics, like say like Mars aspecting Neptune, like does that really is that mainly a concern if a transit is sort of lighting that up at the moment? Or
Yeah, if a transit's lighting it up, we want to really be aware. I mean, like we're in a Mars square Neptune transit right now. It's being lit up by the sun and Mercury. We'll see how it shows up in the news. Sometimes like drownings or things happening with water that were aggressive water floodings. So yeah, in your chart, you can do exactly that. You can kind of like just watch the transit. If it's a longer transit, it'll probably get lit up at different times. Like if it's a transit of Neptune to Mars, it's a 4-year transit. So there's going to be periods where it's not as active. It's not like it's going to be super strong and active the whole time, but it'll get lit up at times. And it's long enough for us to kind of feel into it, feel what it's asking of us. If it's a shorter transit like Mars to Neptune, we really want to sit with those energies, study what that archetypal combination means and how we want to learn from it. It's not like the path of psychedelic-assisted healing is like, just go take psychedelics all the time and they're the answer. That's why I like astrology as a kind of like a parallel track to it, because then we have a practice of actually observing what's happening in our life and the divine choreography of our life and marveling at it, even if it's not something that's ideal to psychedelic-assisted healing. We can still use it as a tool to say, wow, look what's happening. The divine is at play in my life. And so there's still kind of this sense of communion with the divine, even if we're not engaging in specific medicine journeys at that time. Is that helpful?
yeah, thank you.
Yeah. One more question. We'll do one more. And we'll sign off.
I have one small question, if no one else has any questions.
Well, let's just wait. Let's see if anybody else has.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to give people a chance? They haven't taken it already. Otherwise, sure, go for it, Jennifer.
Okay. Small question. Is there a way we can get access either to this recording or maybe like a PDF copy of the PowerPoint slides that you presented?
You will be emailed the recording. I'll email you the recording tomorrow.
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. All right, everybody. So thank you so much for joining here today. It's just beautiful to get the opportunity to be here with you. I look forward to more. Hopefully we'll get to connect further. Come join the Paradigm Shift Integration Circle if you can, if you like, then we can just continue the conversation. So again, thank you for taking the time and giving me your attention today. It's so valuable. I really enjoyed being here with you. So onward, let's keep evolving and growing. And yes, all my love and support.
Thanks,
Yes.
James.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.